Apple partners with Open AI and Nvidia. This is getting interesting.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk about tech, how it affects our lives, what's coming in the future, how we're going to survive the impending robot apocalypse, I guess. If you're into that sort of thing, if that's what you like, robot apocalypses and mobile operating systems, you found the right place, guys. You found the right place. So today we're talking about just all these partnerships and integrations between these companies to make this thing work. And it's unprecedented in modern tech industries for how this is coming together, because it's much more high profile, it's much more high stakes, and three of the biggest players in it, you've got Nvidia, which has essentially turned this company into something it would be unrecognizable 5 years ago, with their commitment to making these chipsets for AI, which has gained immense market value in the stock market for them, immense kind of brand cachet, and just immense power within the tech world because of that. Open AI, who is at this point almost just the kind of associated name you think of when you think of LLMs. I know very few people who go like, yeah, I was just typing in llama the other day. Like everyone, like GPT is kind of the gold standard and has become almost synonymous with large language models. And then you got Apple coming up a little bit from behind with their Apple Intelligence, who is partnering with these guys to kind of the narrative is to catch up. But I think in some ways, just because there's some truth to that, because they just didn't have this tech. They just did not have this tech yet. And they need these companies to do it. So lots of things going on with these partnerships. What's the big ones? What's your read on this?
Well, the first one that we see a lot of right now is Nvidia's dropping Apple's name quite a bit. And it has to do quite a bit with the Apple Vision headset. And we've talked about this Omniverse concept before, which is kind of like this virtual world that you can enter to be iterating on products, and especially iterating on factory design to see things in real space through the Apple Vision. And so the Apple Vision is kind of becoming the tool that NVIDIA is using to demo these things, because it's such a high quality, well operating headset in that regard. So that's kind of exciting to see. But on another level, there's the NVIDIA Apple partnership on their infrastructure that they're going to have to build here. So Apple has talked about their Apple Silicon, but there's also about $5 billion worth of NVIDIA processors that Apple is reportedly going to be buying. And that's probably going to happen very soon here. And we see this all over the place. NVIDIA is just so far ahead with the technology and with the actual hardware being available at scale. And that's kind of the big thing, because we see Tesla, they talk about AI and all this stuff all the time. They have their Dojo computer that they've talked about and worked on. It's demonstrating really good AI capabilities. But what do we see them doing? Buying tons of NVIDIA equipment at all times because of scale and just the necessary compute at this point. So Apple is going to be partnering with them in a big way there, which I think, it's just the latest for NVIDIA, the latest big customer that they're going to be excited to have.
Look, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I think one of them maybe wasn't investing in NVIDIA 2 years ago.
Seriously,
I'm like, man, who would have thought? I guess somebody, CEO of
People
NVIDIA.
thought,
That's who. There were
yeah.
smart people who thought. We're not among them. But yeah, so NVIDIA's doing so many cool things across the board with it. They're not just kind of resting on their laurels and going like, hey, we have made these chips and cool, people are buying them. Awesome. If you look at their CEO is acting like a rock star, man. If you see like him at like Computex last week or 2 weeks ago, like he's like giving autographs,
signing body parts,
signing body parts on women. Like I'm like, what is happening here? Like this is crazy. But I mean, good for this dude, man. He made a lot of good calls, obviously, and what I think is cool is that they're not only partnering with people like Apple to do things like the Omniverse thing, which, this virtual kind of construction planning kind of model. They're not only selling these chips as fast as they can make them, which is very cool. They're like, hey, where's some other stuff we can get involved in? They're looking at all these apps. I mean, they already have with ChatRTX, which is their kind of ability to use large language models on machines that are running on NVIDIA chips, which seems pretty cool. I have not used it personally, but I know that people seem to think that's a cool way to do it because it lets you pick the language model you want to use. So unlike these other companies, they're kind of like tied into a certain language model.
Hmm.
It is just using NVIDIA hardware and through kind of a pretty basic interface, lets you hop onto all these different language models. That's pretty neat. They've shown these other kind of apps they're working on, from the creepy doctor assistant thing that we've seen, where it's a kind of a avatar AI human helping you fulfill your prescriptions and taking out some of the logistics work from healthcare. So interesting there. I don't know, kind of creepy when I saw it, but also cool, I think.
Hmm.
There's this new app that's going to help people play video games, something NVIDIA is kind of known for being big in the PC gaming space. NVIDIA has made gaming hardware. They made the NVIDIA Shield, these different kind of things. So this kind of copying what Microsoft has shown with Copilot in gaming.
Yeah.
So man, so many cool things here. I mean, I could keep listing them, but the main point really is that they have not taken this lightly. They have gone like, oh, we kind of have a door here to do something. Boom, let's attack, let's attack, let's attack, let's attack. And that's what they're doing. And but they're also making these smart kind of partnerships in places they need to, like with Apple. Bring it on. No one makes your product seem cooler than you saying, oh, this is the thing that Apple's using, right? Like, no, it helps you sell things to other people. It helps you look good to your investors and your stockholders. So yeah, good for NVIDIA. I like what they're doing here, I guess. And I'm happy for everyone who's owned their stock for the last couple of years.
Definitely.
Come buy us a drink, man.
Congratulations. Another thing NVIDIA's been talking about recently is synthetic data, which is pretty interesting for LLMs. I think they announced a thing called Nematron 4 340B, which is a family of open models that developers can use to generate synthetic data
Hold up. Say this
for
name.
training large language models.
Say this name again.
Nematron 4 340B.
Of course. This is a freaking droid from Star Wars. Like, what is this name here, man? That's crazy.
Yeah. But essentially, synthetic data is AI data used to train models once they're running out of human data to train on. I don't quite understand the concept
I'm sure
fully.
everything will work out great with this.
Yeah.
Like this idea that things have already consumed the open internet. People have already made content deals with places like Reddit or whatever to scan that information. And then once you have done that, you're like, well, this AI has consumed all of human knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do now? Oh, let's make fake human knowledge. What?
Yeah, I guess I just thought of it like in a hypothetical scenario. Maybe it's like if a robot, you can only train a humanoid robot so much in the real world, but you want it to be able to already know how to handle a situation before it comes across that. So yeah, that is maybe it's like a hypothetical synthetic data that it's training on.
And that's really closer to what's doing. It's not making up human knowledge.
Yeah.
It's basically it's having LLM say, write a bunch of 8th grade book reports with a bunch of errors in them, and then we'll use the machine to scan those, and then it can learn how to make it better and see what's in there and things. So a lot of the situation you're talking about, and making things like drawings, works of art, whatever you want to call it, right? It's generating things that it can like learn from, which is wild when you think about it. But having these things that are generative AI being created to train these things that are also generative AI, but are just not thinking about it in the same way. That's not their specialty. We've talked about this a while as one of the pitfalls of artificial intelligence. And especially, this is what's going to happen to the internet, right? And it's a real fear, I think, in that you're going to get AI trained on AI, and it's going to be hard to figure out and parse out maybe the factual information, the good information. And this is already happening. Like, how many kind of junk SEO articles out there are AI generated? A ton of them, right? And these things are already scraping those and pulling information from that. So the other problem, and I think this is the real fear of mine in this, is that as AI becomes trained on more AI, it's going to revert to kind of a mean for its knowledge and how it thinks about things and how it does stuff, right? Because it's learning from an AI that learned from an AI that learned from an AI. So it's like a recording of a recording for all my fellow, over 38-year-olds out there or something to remember if you record from tape to tape, you would degrade quality every time you do the recording. So it's that kind of thing. And eventually you're just ending up with static, right? And it's going to and if we build these AIs with the idea that they can help us create new things and push humanity forward, how are they going to do that when they've only learned from more of the same?
Yeah.
So this is a solvable problem. I'm not saying this is this is doomsday here, but this is a thing we need to think about, and how we're training these things and how we keep them going forward and not constantly looking back.
Yeah. And then these are going to be things that are in everyone's hands. And ultimately, we want it to be giving definitive answers, but people have different answers for a lot of things. And so it's just an interesting thing to consider. Is it getting the absolute truth? And does that exist, I guess, is the bigger question.
Yeah, that's the truth is maybe not right. And even on things that aren't the absolute truth, right? Like if I, let's say I'm using some generative AI thing, and I say, hey, make a beautiful painting of a sunset. And there's no objective truth to what that can look like, right? And right now, these models trained on, millions of images throughout human history of people drawing sunsets and painting sunsets, and can come up with something based on a lot of different parameters. But let's say in some distant future, 100 years from now, right? How much of pictures of sunsets that exist are going to be AI generated pictures of sunsets that AI has trained on, that AI has trained on, that AI has trained on, right? So it's not even like we're losing factual things, we're losing the chaos of it, which is kind of what makes things go forward, right? That random element that is right now kind of unique to humans, but AI also kind of pulls off pretty well in a lot of cases, right? It throws some weird stuff at you if you have an AI rewrite something or create an image. And I'm worried if we lose that, we almost end up in a kind of a stasis state as a civilization. This guy, I don't know how we went from talking about NVIDIA chipsets to this, but welcome to the All Future Podcast, where I go off the rails, right? That's what we do here.
This is exactly what we do.
That's why we made this thing. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on that, I guess.
But yeah, the rumors with Apple and their partnership with Nvidia, Gurman says that Apple is definitely investing billions in AI computers. And Kuo has said they're buying up to 20,000 that use Nvidia's HGX H100. So there's a lot going on there. And at the very least, we know that if they're partnering with ChatGPT, they are going to be using Nvidia because ChatGPT is using Nvidia. So there's going to be a connection there at the least. But it seems like Apple is going to be investing heavily, buying that hardware because it's available at scale. And then comes Open AI. So the really interesting thing that people had questions about after WWDC is, who does this benefit more? Does it benefit ChatGPT more to be integrated into iPhones, or does it benefit Apple more to be able to integrate ChatGPT? So the question was there, Apple has done deals with people in the past. They've done deals with Google, where they paid them $20 billion in 2022 to be the default search engine.
Yeah, so just to be clear on that, Google pays Apple $20 billion. Yeah.
To be the default search engine so that they get that immediate benefit, that everyone's going to be using that by default. So now ChatGPT is going to be the first AI assistant that you can send things to beyond Apple's. And are they paying Apple? And apparently not. Apparently there's no money exchanging hands in this deal, which is probably the best approach. What do you think?
I mean, I guess not the best if I'm trying to monetize Open AI or so, so but good for everyone. Kind of just lands kind of, well, I mean, how much money is it going to cost Open AI?
Yeah.
A lot. And I'm not talking just about the server cost or whatever, right? Like, I mean, there's all that, right? All that infrastructure, all that server time, right? What's the electricity cost of this, man?
Yeah.
Like millions. When like, how many iPhones are all of a sudden going to start to ping GPT servers? Tens of millions, right? Like every day at an extreme rate, because people just want to mess around with it and do stuff with it, right? And yeah, like it's the electricity they're going to have to pay for, the workers to maintain it, the everything, right? The guy who works at the snack bar there, like there's so much stuff that it costs to maintain this stuff. And for Apple to not be giving them anything, that says that GPT is not worried about the money side of it at all right now. And it's much more valuable to them to get their product into a lot of hands. That's how they're kind of looking at it.
Which goes both ways on how you want to feel about that. A lot of people don't like the fact that OpenAI is going to be integrated into an iPhone, even if it's not on the system level. It's like at the higher level
Yeah.
where you have to decide to send
It's
it.
essentially a shortcut to OpenAI. It's not
Yeah.
really OpenAI isn't running the phone or anything. Yeah.
But even that people don't like, and so maybe there'll be like you can just turn it off in settings, so you never even get prompted to send things to ChatGPT. And then in the future, there's going to be other partnerships with Google and all this stuff. But yeah, it does raise the question. Of course, there's data collection that they need to a certain degree, but then at what point is it like, wow, we're just losing tons of money by running these Apple
Yeah.
requests, and Apple hasn't given us anything.
And yeah, and when it's going to come down, what is GPT's eventual monetization strategy? Because Google looks at it, they're like, oh well, we give Apple $20 billion to be on the phone, but that's nothing compared to how much ad dollars we make when people land on a Google search page
Yeah.
from the iPhones. So this is a great investment for them. Like it pays for itself to do that. No one's really figured out how to monetize these LLMs yet in an effective way. And I'm sure, and they even talked about in the keynote, Apple's going to open it up to other models, so it doesn't just have to go to GPT, it can go to something else. And when that happens, like, how's that going to look? Maybe it'll be something like where there's some kind of money exchanging hands there to make that default slot, that top slot.
Yeah.
Because you can change the default search engine in mobile Safari. I don't know anyone who's done it, but you can go in there and make it not Google. But it's just why would you in most cases, right? Like most people are like, oh, this is just, most people just want the path of least resistance. It's the thing that's just right there. So maybe once there are more LLMs on that Apple will send stuff out to, there'll be a renegotiation of this.
Yeah, just where the resources and money is coming for all these things is so fascinating to think, because it's there because of future investment, but we don't entirely know. We don't like really at all know what the business models are going to be for these things in the future. So ultimately, I think Apple wants to just replace all of these things. They don't want you to be sending requests to ChatGPT or Gemini and things that they can't control. They're doing that because they need to from a functional standpoint to deliver features right now. But long term, couldn't you see them just replacing these things if they can get the functionality in line?
Absolutely. There's been rumors of Apple making their own search engine for years, for example, right? Like, and this is just, does Apple want to do it? They obviously have the money and the technical capabilities of engaging in this, and we've seen them do it with some things. Apple Maps is probably a great example, right? They decided, hey, we want to make our own map thing, and kind of how that all comes about is YouTube was originally the default player on the iPhone. It came pre-installed, and then Google starts making it so where some features aren't on the iOS version of the app. As Android becomes more prominent, they make kind of the standalone YouTube app you can download. All of a sudden, Apple goes, oh man, like maps are a thing that people use their phone a lot for, and we have no control over what this other company does with it. We better figure this out. And then they made this huge investment. They sucked for 3-4 years or whatever, and then now just as good, if not better in some cases, than Apple Map or Google Maps. So I could see a similar thing happening with these features, right?
Yeah.
Where they go, hey, we're giving too much control to people that aren't us. We need them now, but let's start investing now so that we can replace them if we ever need to.
Yeah, and ultimately you're going to probably see a different product. And so they might have that exact same scenario you're talking about where Google Gemini, we can send requests to Google Gemini, but it's much better if I buy an Android because that thing is actually built in at the system level in the future. So yeah, I could see them totally just using this as an opportunity to deliver features today, but they absolutely have the runway and the plan for the future of how they're going to basically eliminate these partnerships and use their own silicon instead of using Nvidia, using OpenAI today, but hopefully not in the future. I think we saw a good example of something Apple wouldn't entirely want to be a part of, whether it's good or bad, this week, because OpenAI has a new board member, former person from the NSA.
Yeah, former director of the NSA.
Director.
Yeah, so the head of the NSA.
Yeah.
Not from when I worked at the NSA. So so you guys, it's not a guy I know.
Not your boss.
Not my old boss. But this, a lot of people are like, whoa, what's going on here? Look, the military-industrial complex makes all these companies work, and whether they want to admit to it or not, right? The real funding for these things is from the government, man. Like the government spends way more in the telecommunications and tech space than consumers do, and is okay with losing a ton of money.
Hmm.
If you look at like things like Microsoft's HoloLens system, right, which was their kind of Apple Vision before Apple Vision, the government funded a ton of that before they just abandoned it.
Hmm.
There's a million examples of this, right? Of like government investing makes these things work. On the AI side, obviously there is immense interest in AI from the military intelligence, industries in this country and in all countries. And I think it's as mixed feelings on this as a former person who worked at the NSA and before that for the military. But it's look, if you want to bring in people who know what they're talking about, I promise you the director of the NSA is smarter on all this stuff than almost anyone you can imagine, because he's been able to do things that normal people cannot with this type of technology.
Hmm.
So if you want to figure out how to implement things, make things safe or make things dangerous, whatever way you want to go with it, this is a guy you're going to need.
Yeah.
And it's maybe that's, again, I don't know this particular general personally. I can't speak to his ability, but I do know the level of information he had access to is far beyond what regular people have access to, and his fidelity of knowledge on that is going to be way more advanced. You're going to need these kinds of people. You're going to need these kinds of people on board. You can't just bring in Silicon Valley tech bros to run these companies.
Yeah.
Especially because those guys come in from a perspective that maybe isn't that healthy either, of like commoditization of everything and
Yeah.
making it a product and making it sell and all this kind of stuff. Where you bring in a guy from maybe from the intelligence community and he's much more interested in application that maybe doesn't have direct monetary value but has incredible impact.
Hmm.
So I think this is something that this is a necessary thing that needs to happen. And I mean, this is like a high profile thing, put him on the board, but I have no doubt there were already liaisons involved in this. If you guys want to ever do something weird, go on Google or Apple Maps, type in your favorite tech companies, and then localize the search to around, say, between Columbia and Jessup, Maryland, which is where Fort Meade is at. And you will see that every tech company has a massive presence in and around the NSA. So this kind of stuff is already there. It's been there since the inception of these tech companies. But so I'm like, well, why not just make it a little more public and let people know, hey, yeah, we're talking to these guys. It's a little less of a kind of conspiracy level thing to do it when you're like, oh yeah, we brought in a guy because he's dealt with classified computer systems for decades. This guy knows what he's doing. Probably good to have this guy talk to us. But when we're talking about the partnerships and everything, obviously this causes a lot of friction. Google has had employees walk out over all kinds of, every tech company has, over support for either the American military industrial complex or for foreign ones. So yeah, it's just another one of those, the myriad of minefield issues that we have to navigate with AI. And I don't think there's an easy answer or necessarily even a right answer. There's almost just that we need to make a call and go forward and just make adjustments.
I always love hearing your takes on all of this stuff. It's
So I get too dark sometimes with it.
No, it's great. I love it. Considering all that stuff is great, but ultimately, I think where this leads is that Apple has these partnerships, and it's good for them. They need it right now, but at the same time, they're kind of beholden to whatever OpenAI decides to do. So if this partnership ends up being a great thing, they long term ultimately don't want to have to be a part of OpenAI. So partnerships today maybe just be soon Apple features.
That's a great way to word that.